What's going on, everyone? My name is Paolo Santamaria. I'm with Kieran and Lacey. This is On the Volley, a brand new football podcast, and let's get into it.
On today's opening show, we're going to be doing a roundup of all of this week's action, including the midweek games and a little bit on the World Cup draw. We're also going to be bringing you our team of the week and our player of the week, as well as a few other news stories. So to start off, let's go straight in with the Premier League, and we've had an action-packed week with midweek games, and of course we had the fantastic game between Manchester United and Arsenal at the weekend too. So, Paolo, if you had to pick any of the 20 games we've had, which would you pick out as sort of your standout game, I guess?
Other than the obvious Man United-Arsenal game, which saw Paul Pogba go off with a red card, I would definitely have to pick actually both of Man City's games this week. So, in both instances, we saw them nearly drop points before a late winner. On Wednesday, we had Raheem Sterling coming in with basically what was the last touch of the game. And then on Sunday, we had them take down West Ham with David Silva's late winner in the 84th minute. So I'd probably pick both of Man City's games as the standout games. Of note, as a Liverpool fan, I would like to point out that Liverpool notched 8 goals this week in Premier League play, moving up to 4th. We saw Tottenham drop. They dropped points to Leicester, and then they also dropped points on Saturday as they tied Watford, seeing Davinson Sanchez get sent off. What about you, Kieran? What's your look at both the top of the table and also at the bottom of the table with some shake-up in the managers?
Yeah, so obviously the standout game is that Manchester United-Arsenal game with, Arsenal throwing everything they can at Manchester United, and somehow, in fact, I was about to say we don't know how, but we do know how. It's because one man turned into a god.
David De Gea was incredible.
What a player this man is becoming. I remember a few years ago when there was so much criticism on De Gea. He wasn't commanding enough of his penalty area. You could loop crosses in sort of under the crossbar and he would struggle. And he's just transformed over the last 2 years especially into possibly a controversial opinion, but in my opinion, the best keeper in the world at the moment.
I don't think it's a controversial opinion. I mean, this is a segment that we're planning to do for listeners in the future where we discuss positions and who's the best in the world at the time. But I think, in addition to right wing, goalkeeper is obviously David De Gea.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this guy who is at the top of his form, the top of his game. It's no discredit to Neuer, who's obviously injured with the foot. He's injured till at least January. But David De Gea is by far the best keeper in the world right now. He's got Spain through qualification unbeaten. He's got Manchester United posting one of the fewest goals conceded across all competition. And if you see the kind of saves he's making, for those of you who haven't seen it, obviously David De Gea tied the record for Premier League saves, but he also had the double sequence where he saved one shot coming right at him, dove to his right, and then coming off the rebound, he saves it with his foot, deflecting it off to prevent a sure Arsenal goal.
It was one of the best saves I've seen, or best double saves I've seen in my life. And I've been an avid football watcher for nigh on 20 years now, and I've obviously gone through some amazing goalkeepers. Gigi Buffon, who arguably is the best of his ability at the moment. Casillas as well. I got to see Oliver Kahn, the legendary German goalkeeper, and people like Edwin van der Sar, the best of Petr Cech. Pepe Reina for a couple of seasons was up there. So really incredible goalkeepers, but some of the saves De Gea made, and I think that was what was most impressive. I think he tied the record. I think it was with Vito Manone.
And Tim Krul as well.
Tim Krul, yes. And I think the main difference is, Manone, Krul, they played for much weaker sides who didn't have that great defence. And I actually remember, now that you mentioned Tim Krul, I actually remember that game, seeing the highlights of it, and he had a great game. But what De Gea did was just so much more unbelievable, because nearly every save he made was, world class. There was a moment where Lukaku, the Man U striker, went to clear the ball and
had that own goal.
Yeah,
that almost own goal.
Almost own goal. That save was unbelievable. And then the double save as well from Lacazette, I think it was, and then Sanchez following, was just breathtakingly good. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of any Premier League side. I don't have a favourite Premier League team. I am unfortunate enough to be an Oxford United fan. Struggling in League One at the moment, but we won't talk about them because I might cry. So I don't particularly have any bias against any Premier League teams, but there are some where, for years Man United were just the best. You had all the conspiracies of Fergie time and all of that. And so you gain I like to see the big teams lose, basically. And I like to see the underdogs win. But Manchester United over the weekend was one of the most masterful performances. And I don't like the whole defensive playing style that Mourinho goes for.
But it's their tactic, and at the core of that tactic, when it breaks down, is De Gea. I mean, he has saved them points time and time again. I mean, when they came to Anfield and they played defensive the whole way, and Liverpool came out on the front foot, they were just throwing everything at Man U. De Gea was just making save after save after save, and he has saved points time and time again for Manchester United this season.
Yeah, and I think when you've got a goalkeeper like De Gea behind you, it gives you more confidence as a defender. You've got a really incredible wing-back in Valencia who he loves to get forward. He started his career as a winger. He loves to bomb forward, and he proved that.
You have Ashley Young on the other side who does the same exact thing too.
And sort of they've proved, because Ashley Young, grabbed himself a couple of goals recently, and then you've got Valencia on the other side, got a goal at the weekend against Arsenal. So with them bombing forward constantly, you've got to rely on your centre-backs. And let's be honest, the centre-backs of Manchester United are nowhere near the quality we've seen in the past. You used to have players like Vidic and Ferdinand, who...
Ferdinand, of course, the big one.
One of the best defensive partnerships, in probably history. That period where you had, John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, Vidic, you had so many other...
Evra
as well. So many amazing defenders in the Premier League, and I think that's one of the reasons the Premier League has sort of dropped off a little bit. It's the quality of defenders has gone down. But when you've got a goalkeeper like De Gea behind you, it just gives you that much more confidence. I think it's bringing the best out of the Manchester United defence, and it's also then giving the midfield that ability. You've got Matic coming in, who's having an amazing season, who's also...
Pogba. And the creative force.
Yeah. And you see it as well with the attackers. Jesse Lingard is a player who I've been a critic of in the past, to say the least, and I think a lot of people have. And he bagged himself 2 goals. And the reason
And he's in form now. He is playing like the attacking midfielder that Manchester United needs in order to challenge for the title and to catch City.
And he's come into a side that boasts in their sort of attacking quartet, if you like, Martial, Rashford, Mata, Mkhitaryan, really strong players. And he's now just come in and said, right, I've got the chance here against Arsenal. I'm just going to go for it. And he played with confidence. And again, that comes from having the knowledge that the players behind you are going to do their job. And I think that is the major difference between Manchester United this season and, say, Arsenal or Liverpool or, Everton, especially this season, is they don't have the faith in their back line and in their goalkeeper. I think... And
on that defensive note, though, I mean, we have seen that kind of become the thing across the other top leagues to kind of move forward. I mean, you have this top of the table clash coming up next week in the Manchester Derby with United and City, and we saw something like that in Serie A this week.
We did.
We had Napoli against Juventus, and this is the big thing. Napoli has been in incredible form this year. Under Sarri, they're playing amazing football. Mertens in the center forward position, and you have Insigne and Callejon bombing down on the wings, and they come in and they're playing Juventus, who are the leaders. I mean, they've done the Scudetto 5 seasons in a row now,
Something
6
like
seasons
that,
in a row, and you see them come out in full force attack, and Juventus is able to pick apart their style. They're able to pick apart between the lines. Sarri has them kind of moving forward. The wing backs, you have Gulam. They're trying to push forward, and they're trying to create the space and make those incisive passes so that Callejon, Insigne, Mertens can get those goals. And you have Juventus pick it apart slowly by slowly, and they found Higuain edge of the box. He comes in. just one-time shot, just right past Reina, and Juventus just moves back, and they say, okay, we're getting the result. We're getting this win. And that's what they did. That was the big matchup. I would say that it kind of let people down. I mean, a 1-0 result, I don't know how you feel about that. It should be, two teams known for a beautiful style of football. They kind of play a gritty 1-0, almost Premier League style game. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that top of the table. And it's kind of a letdown in terms of the quality of play that we saw.
I mean, it does tend to happen when you have two really good sort of attacking teams with lots of sort of creative players in there, and then they come up against each other. It's like, you tend to find the home team will try and play their attacking creative football, and the away side will tend to sit back and let them be creative, and then try and hit them on the counter attack. And it's a strategy that we know works well. The last 2 seasons in the Premier League, teams have practically won the league by building from the back, having a really strong back line. Leicester were an incredible counter attacking side. And then Chelsea, less so counter-attacking, but at the same time, the strength came from that bank of 5 at the back, from the wing-backs bombing forward and having that back 3 that, again, you could rely on. In a similar fashion, Courtois to De Gea, a goalkeeper you could rely on, and then, of course, N'Golo Kante as well. And I think what tends to happen, it happens a lot more across the European leagues than in the Premier Leagues. I think in the Premier League, it's a lot more evenly matched across the whole league. So you tend to find teams are slightly better at breaking down those defensive oppositions because they come up against it with your teams like Stoke, with your West Broms, things like that, who are very good at what they do. Whereas I think you have a little bit less quality in the European leagues in general. I know there are some great teams across all of the top 5 leagues, but I think just the quality is slightly better in the Premier League on the bottom half. And so teams have to work harder more often, sort of thing. So it's a little bit easier. But then again, the Manchester United-Liverpool game, completely contrary to that.
Yeah, and it's exactly that kind of thing, where you play defensive football and you get the results you want, but then something comes up and sneaks up around you. And that's exactly what, in Serie A, that's what Inter Milan have done. They came in and they saw the result at the top of the table. Obviously, Juventus and Napoli were still up top. Inter were a couple points behind, but they came out and they're like, okay, we're going to win this game. And they're one of a few teams in all the top 5 leagues who have the chance to complete the invincible season. Not saying that's going to happen, but they haven't lost yet. They haven't suffered that first defeat. And they came in and they bagged 5 goals. They bagged 5 goals behind a hat-trick from Perisic, behind the incredible play of Icardi. And now they've got a really, really great shot at staying forward. And they've got that goal differential. I mean, when you look at the top of the table in Serie A, those close points between Roma, Napoli, Juventus, and Inter, you've got goal differential coming down to it as a possibility. And when you're a team like Inter with all the attacking options, when you're a team like Napoli and Juventus, why is there a reason to sit back? Because at the end of the day, you're going to see that goal differential come into play. And we saw it, way back when, obviously, you see Man City won the title in 2012 over Man U because of goal differential. And you see it happen all the time. And I think when you're going into these big matchups and when you're going into matchups in general, you need to find a way to bag that goal differential. Napoli's 25 goals, Juventus is 27. Inter before this weekend was way behind, but now they're in 23 and they're a point ahead. And when it comes down to the end of the season, if Inter can keep producing results like this, and Napoli and Juventus are perhaps happy to sit back, they've got other football to worry about. That's another consideration, right? Inter doesn't have European football. Napoli and Juventus have the Champions League.
And I think that is the crucial point when it comes to Inter Milan. Can they go and do the invincible season? With the teams across the other leagues and with their competitors, there's European football in there. And I think Inter Milan are going to be able to take advantage of the fact that, it's disappointing they're not in Europe. I remember a few years ago, about a decade ago, where Italian football dominated the Champions League. You had AC Milan, Inter Milan and Juventus, all fantastic. And then similarly, you had Roma, who were still, always in there, as among other teams. And Italian football, it's sort of... It dropped off. It really dropped off. You had all of the issues with Juventus, and then AC Milan, Inter Milan just seemed to drop off a little bit. And just in general, Italian football just seemed to lower in quality, and it had a few sort of stale years, and then you had the rise of Juventus coming back up with some incredible teams, some incredible defensive teams as well. Sticking on the whole defensive strategies, I guess. And now I think other Italian teams are starting to see what Juventus have done, and they're starting to think, you know what, we can do that too. And I think at the start of the season, a lot of people had good money on AC Milan to do well, and I think Inter Milan have sort of snuck in there and gone, actually, we've got the quality to do this, so let's go out and do it.
And they have done, and that's what makes the Serie A title race the most exciting right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, Premier League football is that's the big name. It's the TV money. That's the league that everyone gravitates to. I live in the U.S., and when people in the U.S. are like, "What's your team?" It's always a Premier League team. You have the odd, Barcelona, Real Madrid, but it's the Premier League. But Serie A this year, the title race is where it's at. And as far as the other title races go, just a quick roundup of those. We saw this weekend. We saw Barcelona get screwed over by the referees again. Luis Suarez had an incredible run, just massively timed, world class, called offsides when he clearly wasn't offside. They bagged another goal. Celta Vigo, they equalized late, so it finished 2-2. Barcelona dropping points. And you have Real Madrid. They had a chance, but of course they had Sergio Ramos sent off. Most send-offs in La Liga history. They drew against Athletic Club. I mean, obviously, that's not the result you want. Real Madrid continues their spiral. And then you have the chance. The guys in second, Valencia, they're having an incredible season. I mean, Kieran and I were talking about this a couple days ago. They had the chance, again, Invincibles run. They were having an incredible season, and they blew it on Sunday. They lost. They lost to Getafe 1-0. Terrible result. Getafe were playing with 10 men. Valencia should have capitalized. So Barcelona still sits at the top of the table. You have in Ligue 1, you have PSG. Obviously, it's their league to lose. Everyone knows that. They signed Neymar. They have Mbappe on loan with an obligation to buy. They should be dominating, but they lost to Strasbourg. That was an incredible result. Strasbourg should feel amazing. And while that's not going to really tip the scales, it does show that PSG are vulnerable. Maybe they can lose in the Champions League. Maybe they're not the best team in form, like anyone said. And to round it out in the Bundesliga, we see Dortmund's fall continue. They were riding high, hadn't lost, were a few points clear of everyone, and then now they haven't won in some number of games. They drew again this weekend, and we saw Bayern win and reclaim their places, top of the league. It's their league. And to round out the top 5 leagues, we kind of see an interesting race in Serie A, but we're starting to see Barcelona pull away in La Liga. We're starting to see Bayern make it their own. And PSG, even though they'll have some ups and downs, it's probably theirs. And as we all know in the Premier League, it's Man City's title to lose at this point.
Brilliant. And that is your brief roundup of the main talking points across the top leagues. My specialty is the Premier League, and so I feel like each week we're going to have a little bit more of a focus on the Premier League.
Oh, for sure.
But Paolo is just that little bit more tuned into the rest of Europe, and he proved it there. Great stuff. But there was one more big story over the course, not quite the weekend, sort of towards the end of Friday, depending on where you live, and that is the World Cup draw. And the less said about your team, the better in terms of the World Cup draw, because they weren't in it.
Right. No, but I would like to point out, for the purposes of this show going forward, my family is part Spanish, so I do have the luxury of falling back on a decent team. That guy, we have a keeper who's pretty good. You might have mentioned him before.
Yeah,
that one. Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
So the standout, of course, being English for me, the England group. I think, if there is, dodgy goings on with Russia sort of fixing the groups a little bit, which people have been saying for some reason, I'm not unhappy with them doing it, because I'm quite happy with England's group. Of course, we did have sort of the slight hiccup of Belgium, but we've been fortunate that we've drawn them as the last team we play, and so hopefully by the time we get to Belgium, we'll have smashed Panama and Tunisia to pieces. I don't think we're going to smash them to pieces. I think they're both going to be quite cagey games, but I do think England should come out on top in both of them. I think the quality is just there that they'll be able to get those victories, and then I think Belgium will do the same, and then it'll just be a case of 2 teams on 6 points, 2 teams on 0 points, and the pressure will be off for both, and you'll basically be playing for who do we face the next round? And there's no way about it. After the first knockout stage, it gets more difficult. No matter what path England go on.
And that's assuming you make it through the group stage, though. I mean,
Yeah.
this is classic. Like, yeah, England, Croatia, Iceland. The fourth team I forgot, but to not make it out of that Euro group. I mean, no disrespect to Iceland, but FC Gylfi Sigurdsson should not have beaten the team that England sent to 2016.
Absolutely not. And I think the thing with England at the Euros was there was just no sort of expectations. I think the manager was sort of quite condemned to the fact. I don't know if maybe he'd been told you have to get this far or you're fired, or whether he'd been told, we're probably not going to renew your contract at the end of this tournament or whatever. But there just seemed to be a lack of any passion throughout that team, except for in the Wales game. But I honestly think that passion came from the Wales fans. They were so passionate that it lifted the England team as well, because they were like...
All right, Wales was the team, not Croatia. I'm sorry, that's a correction. Croatia was in Spain's group.
Yeah, and so I think, the Wales support, which was incredible. I live in Wales. I am English, but I live in Wales. It's sort of my adoptive country. And, just living in Cardiff, which is where I lived at the time, and being there during the support for Wales was incredible. And, of course, they haven't made it to the World Cup, which is a great shame for them. But that was the only time we saw England actually react. And that last second goal, it was the first time I'd seen proper passion from England since sort of the days of David Beckham. That was a man who you got.
But now you look at the team though, and you have these kids. They're winning trophies together at a young age. They're playing on the same couple teams. I mean, Tottenham, Liverpool. You have the odd Chelsea player here and there, odd Stoke player, but most of the time, they're the same team. They're building that passion. They're building that relationship. So hopefully, this young team that Southgate seems to be willing to experiment with, it seems like a team that could provide the passion.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, when Southgate was first hired, there was just a moan of it's uninspiring. And, I was a part of that. And for most of the qualifying stages as well, I was really not sold on Gareth Southgate being the manager. But those two friendlies against Germany and Brazil, and some people have very, very different opinions to me on this, and that's absolutely fine. But what I saw was a mixture of players who've got a little bit of experience and players that are brand new, and players with a couple of games under their belts come in against arguably the two best teams in the world. Admittedly, Germany played a weakened side.
A very, very weak side. But that Brazil game, let's harp on that for a little bit.
The Brazil side was probably what you'd expect to see going into that first game at the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is you had this really young England side who, because of not having the weight of we're England, we should be challenging, and the English fans all like, oh my god, here's this same team over and over again to grind out a 1-0 against Malta. They played fearlessly, and there's just one image in my head constantly of Neymar taking a run at Liverpool's young defender Joe Gomez and thinking, oh my god, it's the end of the world. But what actually happened was every single time Joe Gomez just went, you know what, Neymar, I don't give a damn about who you are. I'm going to win that ball. I want that ball, so I'm going to take it. Did he make a couple of mistakes, trying to play out from the back? Possibly. But you know what? He's young, he'll learn, and I would rather, at this World Cup, because I don't think there's any chance of England winning it, because we don't have the quality in the squad.
No, that would be a delusion.
Yeah. I mean, it could happen. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that the underdog can win the tournament. Portugal, at the last Euros, definitely were not expected to beat France. And then, you had Greece win the Euros in 2004. That was unbelievable. But I don't think this England squad has the quality. On the path between England and the World Cup final is almost certainly Germany and Brazil. And although we played them and sort of grinded out 0-0s, 0-0 is not going to win you a tournament. And
no, because then you get into extra time and then the quality just shows. I mean, you give players like Neymar and Jesus and Coutinho, if you give them the time, in extra time, they'll rip you apart. If Germany puts out their A squad, I don't think there's a team right now that has shown they're capable of challenging Germany's A squad.
No, and I think that's the key thing is, sure, we can possibly grind out a 0-0. The last time we did that in a tournament, grinded out a 0-0 against a superior team, we lost on penalties to Italy. I think it was Euro 2012. And that is exactly what will happen again. And I'm not just saying it because the curse of England, we can't win at penalties. It's not just that we can't win at penalties. It's that the quality that these other teams have striking the ball just in general is so much higher. England, we've got Harry Kane, who is, probably in the top 5 strikers in the world right now. We've got Dele Alli, can probably hit quite a nice penalty. And we've got a couple of other players who can do it, half decent. But with Brazil, you've got Neymar, you've got Jesus, you've got Coutinho, and that's 3 players there already that can hit the ball well. And I know taking a penalty is slightly different, but inherently you've got to have that ability on the ball as a striker before you can...
And it's about how you play during the game as well. When you think about England's tactics in the past, right, you have these players, these great players, Lampard, Gerrard, Ferdinand. They're all playing within themselves because they don't have a system, and they have this expectation that we're England. We need to get a result. So you're going to sit back and, like you said, hope for that one goal. Let's nag a goal in the 76th minute and just ride out our defense till the end. And that's not the way England needs to play. And I think, we've talked about this personally, is that players like Dele Alli while they're good, he had a great season last year. He's having a down season this year, but he's kind of showing some of that England entitlement, at least from what I've seen. He's kind of sitting back. He's playing within, he's just playing with himself. He's not playing for others. And you need these players with those chips on their shoulders. You need the Marcus Rashford who has something to prove, who has that attacking mentality. You want Jamie Vardy, the king of the chip on his shoulder. And you need players like that for England to move forward, to bomb forward, and hope to nick that counter-attack goal rather than just sitting back and trying to grind out long balls into the box.
And I think you used the word entitlement, and I think that is absolutely what has been the issue with England for the last God knows how many years. And it's starting, Gareth Southgate is starting to sort of get rid of that, entitlement. Players that look at the England squad and think, that's my position. And you've seen it for years and years and years, You had your players like your Wayne Rooney, who admittedly was England's best player for a long time. Gareth Southgate rather dropped him. Admittedly not when he's not playing at his best, but he was brave enough to say, I don't care that you're the captain, I don't care that you're England's record goal scorer, I don't care that you're arguably the greatest British player ever. I'm going to drop you, you're not playing well. And he's done that a couple of times where he's dropped players who aren't playing well. He needs to stick with it. He showed with those 2 0-0s, and I know 0-0 is not exciting at all, and no one wants to watch a 0-0 ball draw, even if it is against the likes of Brazil and Germany. But what he proved with I know he was forced into some of those decisions, but what he proved is that the youngsters are ready to come in, and it's time now to start just, I don't want to say retiring players early, but we need to start looking at these players that have gotten too comfortable in their position, and just start saying, look, we've got this youngster here, and he's doing quite good at the moment. Your position's under threat. You need to step it up and show what you can do in an England shirt. And there are a few...
Looking at you, Henderson.
Yeah.
Who has also been terrible for Liverpool.
There are a few players. Joe Hart is one of them. And I think with Pickford's performance against Germany, I think it was, he's starting to make Joe Hart think, okay, that's not good. And then obviously Joe Hart was dropped at the weekend as well. Adrian played in goal for West Ham. I'm not sure if there was an injury there.
The clause, he wasn't allowed to play for West Ham. He wasn't allowed to play against Man City,
of course, yeah. But, yeah, Adrian had a decent game, and...
He had a good game.
And, now his position at West Ham's under threat. You've also got Jack Butland, who is a fantastic goalkeeper as well, and then you've also got Tom Heaton's been doing very well. Forster on his day is very good. Ben Foster for West Brom has had some fantastic performances in the past. So, Joe Hart's under threat. Jordan Henderson.
It's got to be Pickford. It's got to be Pickford, and it's got to be Butland. It's got to be a competition.
Yeah, I think those are the two that should be competing for that spot. And if anyone else is in that spot, then something's gone wrong. And then
they better deserve it. The point is, they better have earned that spot if they're competing with Pickford and Butland, because the play says that they can both do the job better than Hart, and Pickford also can play out the back, which I think now in the modern game with modern tactics, you want those ball-playing center backs, and you want a keeper that's comfortable on the ball.
Yeah, and I think in the midfield you've got players like Loftus-Cheek who had some fantastic games in those two friendlies, and another player I've been very critical of, Livermore, did really well in those two games. I thought he, wasn't great going forward. Like he's not an attacking player, but he's got the stature, he's got the size, and he bullied some of those players out there, and that's something you're going to need, especially when playing against physical players from Panama and Belgium. Like you need someone who's going to be able to match Dembele for Belgium, and
I mean, that's the point that I want to make before we wrap up the England thing, is that I think, just looking at your perspective from someone who isn't an England fan, you need to sort out the keeper, because I think someone who can stop shots, play out the back, is more poised than Joe Hart is absolutely necessary. And then that holding midfield. I mean, that someone who can hold down that defense, because England, I mean, you have Rashford, you have Sterling, you have Kane. That's three players right there. That's a front three that any team would be worried to face. Especially with
it's probably
but you need that holding midfielder.
Yeah. I think that front, the attacking players, is like the options we've got, because we've also got Vardy as well, Jesse Lingard we mentioned earlier. If he can keep up this form, he's going to be right in there too. And then you've got other players that can come in and play in those attacking positions. Solanke is starting to look like a decent player. Tammy Abraham did quite well when he played. Young players coming through. And so attacking options, we're not doing too badly, all things considered. And then if Dele Alli can get his form back as well, there's him too. But where we're really weak at the moment is that holding midfield. We've got enough players going forward. Our defence isn't looking too bad. We've got decent options at fullback on both sides, and central defence. That three defence that we played in those two friendlies, I thought were fantastic. And I think England, they need to win those first two games to take the pressure off against Belgium, because I think if we go into that Belgium game needing a win, that's when we could have trouble.
Exactly.
Because Belgium know the England team better than anyone. So moving on to the rest of the World Cup draw now. As we've just talked through Group G and England, we'll go through the other teams of Group G sort of a little bit later on. But let's start with Group A. So let's
start with Group A.
We've got the hosts, Russia, Saudi Arabia, who could be maybe a dark horse. Probably not, but I mean, remember what happened with Costa Rica at the last World Cup?
That's true, and their manager is actually the former manager of Chile.
Exactly.
So,
but then again, when you look at the other two in the group, maybe not, because you've also got Mohamed Salah's Egypt and the ever-present force of Uruguay. So it's. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it's possibly the easiest group, which
I don't think I agree with that.
I think the thing with that group, there isn't what you'd call a powerhouse in there. There is, because that's the group with Russia. But you're always going to have, at least one group where you didn't have what you'd consider a top team, and it was most likely going to be Russia's group or Poland's group or both.
Right. But I mean, other than Uruguay, no disrespect to Poland or England, but they are, or Croatia, but Uruguay are the second best Pot B team, Pot 2 team. Sorry. We're talking about qualifications. CONMEBOL is incredibly difficult. You have all the teams in South America vying for a limited number of spots, and they all have to play each other. It's not like Europe where, no disrespect to England again, but they got a very easy World Cup qualification group. Everyone has to play everyone in South America. And Uruguay, along with Brazil, one of the two teams that didn't have to worry about anything going into that last day.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of a testament to, with Uruguay, you don't have as many, of course you got the obvious big names, but you don't have anywhere near as many big names as, say, Argentina. And yet, they were comfortable going into that last day. Argentina weren't.
And that's because Uruguay plays with knowledge, and they play as a team. You have Cavani, you have Suarez, you have Jimenez to anchor the defense, and other than that, you don't have a lot of the marquee players that you would be able to pick out. And obviously you don't have Diego Forlan anymore, who was just the talisman in the midfield. But they're a team that, if their midfield and if their tactics are working and they're clicking and they're feeding the ball to Cavani and Suarez, there is no other team that can trade goal for goal with those two when they're in form. I mean, you're talking about two of the most decorated strikers in football history, and they're still in their primes, even though Suarez is just starting to find his form again.
And I think the thing with the way the groups are panned out, if and when Uruguay get through, they don't have...
Oh, and Godin. How can I forget him?
Of course, Godin. But yeah, they don't even have like the most difficult path to get further on into the tournament, because they'll come up against one of the teams from Group B, who we'll go through in a minute. Most likely probably going to be Portugal, who, Ronaldo is, of course, a world-class player, or the world-class player even, but the rest of the Portugal team, they don't have the likes of the Luis Figo and the Deco anymore.
They have young players. That are very good.
But I would fancy Uruguay to win that game.
If we assume they top the group, and this is kind of the draw that we saw in 2010, where Uruguay, maybe not the strongest team on paper, but they could potentially make another run to the semifinals.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I cannot see Russia and Saudi Arabia beating them or even getting points against them. Egypt, I think the thing with Egypt is they play very well as a team, and they're brought together by Mo Salah. If Mo Salah is in the same form at the World Cup as he is right now in the Premier League, they're going to be a force, and I think they'll be able to get a draw against Uruguay, and I think it'll go down to goal difference between the two, and I think Uruguay will edge it because they've got the superior strike force of Suarez and Cavani. And so I think Uruguay will top that group and Egypt second.
Yeah, assuming Suarez doesn't bite anyone. Okay.
Assuming Suarez doesn't bite anyone again. And then obviously going on from that, those two sides will move on to play sides from Group B. The Group B contains Portugal, Spain, which is your team, Morocco, and Iran. And so...
First of all, the second game of the World Cup, Spain and Portugal. I mean, you want to talk about a clash of titans.
Yeah. I think it's a game that will set the tone for the World Cup, really, because I think a lot of people are saying, the opening game is not particularly exciting, Russia and Saudi Arabia. It is what it is. The second game I'm really looking forward to, Egypt and Uruguay, but that third game, Portugal and Spain, is going to be, it's going to be it's going to be a pace setter, because you've got the champions of Europe against one of the favourite teams going into the tournament.
Also one of the most decorated teams of the last decade in international football. You talk about 2 Euros and a World Cup.
Exactly. And so that is going to be the pace setter. If one of those two teams comes out and smashes 4 past the other, which on balance is more likely to be Spain than Portugal, then suddenly people are going to take note and they're going to be like, hold on, this is the team to watch. This is the one that we need to be fearing in the next round. Especially those sort of in Group A, in Group C, in Group D,
right.
The ones that have a chance of coming up against them in sort of multiple areas,
Right.
For England, it's
let's
the case of the final, but still.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk tactics in this match, because these are two teams where selection is not so much a controversy, but more like an embarrassment of riches, really. It's hard to decide, but you know who the mainstays are going to be. You have De Gea, you have Ronaldo, you have the young gun Bernardo Silva, you have a guy who's in down form, Andre Silva for AC Milan, 0 goals so far in the league this season. And you have a team, you have Carvalho, you have Pereira, you have João Mario, you have Patricio in goal, you have Pepe still, Nani. I mean, you've got some names. I mean, none of them are Ronaldo level, obviously. But you've got this guy Ronaldo. He's the captain of Portugal. He's going to lead them to the promised land. They play through him, and he creates for them. And you saw it in the Euros. I mean, even without Ronaldo, they were still able to win. So it's a good team. And you have Spain. I mean, Spain is a team that has gone through so much turnover. But David Villa is finally back in the squad. Iniesta has regained some form, and you have incredible players all over the place. You have Thiago, he's good. I mean, last year he was incredible. He was arguably the best midfielder in the world. But you have him again this year. You have Morata, who's a real number 9. You have Callejon on the wing, who's in form for Napoli. And you have this defense. You have Carvajal, Jordi Alba, Sergio Ramos, Piqué, who's not doing that great. But you have guys like Nacho who are willing to step up. I mean, you have players everywhere. Asensio, the wonder kid for Real Madrid. I mean, what can Portugal do to just stop a classical Spain performance? I mean, you with all the names I just mentioned, this is classic possession style tiki-taka football that just leaves you breathless, because all of a sudden you have David Villa making the perfect run and slotting it past the keeper. You have Morata with incredible heading ability. I mean, Spain can do what they want with their selection. And Portugal, they have Ronaldo, they have good young players, but I mean, they are going to be on the back foot. So what happens in this game? How can Portugal get a point or even 3 points?
I think it all comes down to Ronaldo. I think that is the key difference between these two sides, is Spain have a squad of world-class players, and it's, as I said, Ronaldo is the world-class player. And I think if he's firing, then Spain will need to score 2 or 3 to get a win. Because he's the sort of player that can carry a team to victory, even if they're not playing well. We've seen him do it for Madrid many times. Even when he was at Man United, he did it. And that was before he was at his best. And I think, he's not had his best start to a season. He is
a top scorer in the Champions League, which people do forget.
Of course. And, he's starting to pick his form back up. He had a slow start, but he's picking up now in the league. And obviously in the Champions League, as you said, doing pretty well. It all depends on, in some ways, his fitness as well. At the end of the day, if Real Madrid go on another amazing Champions League run, win the Champions League, they got all the La Liga games, you've got the Spanish Cup and things like that. Is he going to be fit enough to carry another team? Although he doesn't carry Real Madrid so much, but to carry Portugal in the World Cup, bearing in mind the teams he's got to come up against in Spain.
And this group is not easy. I mean, we talk about this matchup, and let's say when they're able to eke out a draw. I mean, through hell or high water, they're able to eke out a draw, and it's incredible, and it's a smashing draw, and everyone is tuned in. But look at the other team. They have Morocco, who didn't concede a goal in qualification. Yeah, and they have Amrabat, they have Benassia, they have loads of other good players that you'll look at and be like, oh, he's a good player. Didn't realize he was Moroccan. That's their kind of team. And you have Iran, who are just World Cup mainstays. I mean, people tend to forget that they just breezed through the Asian qualification. They didn't concede a goal until the last game when they had nothing to play for. And these are two teams that could, like you said, they could pull La Costa Rica. They could come up with the quality they have. They could have the right tactics, and they could equal out. All it takes is one win. All it takes is one win and a point in a game that you weren't supposed to get.
Yeah.
And you're through.
And I think every single World Cup, there is a team you expect to do well that doesn't. 2002...
It's been Spain. It was Spain.
Yeah.
It was Spain.
Last World Cup, it was Spain. In 2002, you had France. You've had, who am I thinking of?
Germany, even.
Yeah, Germany even have had some disappointing exits. Italy didn't even make it to this World Cup. Holland have had some poor fortune the last 4 years. There's always teams that don't do as well as they should. And, last World Cup you also had England in that list. And Portugal is one of those teams in this tournament that I fear for. That they're going to be the team that you expect to get through their group. Maybe not as winners, but you expect them to get through their group. But they might not. And honestly, there's a few teams that you worry about, but I think they are the biggest. Because I think especially Morocco can get a result up against Portugal. Maybe not a win, but they can get a draw. Absolutely.
And they can get one against Spain too,
yeah.
Which is what we have to be careful for.
And I think what Portugal don't have that a team like Spain do is incredible squad depth. So that if a player like Ronaldo gets injured, someone can come in and do the same job. They've got plenty of players that can do a decent job, but with a team like Spain, you named all those fantastic midfielders. You didn't even name David Silva and Cesc Fabregas, who can come in.
No, I forgot about them.
Exactly. That's what Spain have, and that's what I think the top teams have. your Germanys, your Brazils, that Portugal don't. And that's why I have a slight sort of inkling that they might not make it out of their group. They might prove me wrong. It might be that Morocco come up against these two European giants and get battered. But I think if any team can do it, or if any of the sort of the pot 3, pot 4 teams can cause an upset, it's Morocco against Portugal. So let's move on to Group C now.
Group C, where your favorites are playing.
Yes, the team that I think, maybe not favourites, but the team I think, if they play to their
will win the World
best...
Cup. If you were a betting man, you would bet on France.
It's tough. There's 3 or 4 teams I would consider. I think if every team is playing at their absolute best, every single player in the entire squad is at their absolute best, I think France could win it. And they've managed to get themselves the best possible start with a group that they should, again, we're saying it with Portugal, upsets can happen, they should breeze through it. They're with Australia, Peru and Denmark. Denmark, of course, have a decent team. They've got Christian Eriksen. It's sort of the big standout player. And obviously Schmeichel in goal, of course. But Australia and Peru, they're two teams that they're good on their day, but they've never really mixed it massively with the big teams in sort of recent memory sort of thing.
Right. And that's the thing, too, that we have to see. I mean, Australia and Peru both qualified through those last-minute playoff games.
I mean, so did Denmark.
So did Denmark. I mean, this is a whole group of last-minute qualifiers. Yeah. But with Peru, I think something that they offer that other teams don't in this group is that physicality. Yeah. Combined with just enough technical quality. I mean, they were in that hunt. I mean, they qualified over Chile, who are the reigning South American champions. Like, they qualified over Chile. Like, they have the ability to hold back a game, to play that kind of defensive ball, that park the bus style ball that allows them to get points against teams like France and like Denmark.
Yeah, and although I can't see them like getting a win against France or Denmark, they could get themselves a cheeky point against both. And I could see them going on to beat Australia,
which would give them 5 points and potentially second in the group.
Enough to get through. I think, just on the balance of the quality in the squad, I think France will beat Peru. But it's another one of those situations. Peru, they're one of those teams that I think people underestimate because they're not a powerhouse country. They're not a team that you come up against and think, okay, these guys are going to be a challenge. I think it's a similar situation to Morocco in Group B, that they could come out and they could surprise a few. Yep. And I think it's another situation, not quite to the level of Portugal, because I think Portugal are a much bigger side, where they could sneak into that second spot above Denmark. And Australia, I don't hold out much hope for Australia, unfortunately.
No, They have Tim Cahill. He's a great captain. He's an icon, a hero, and they're just happy to be here. They're happy to be in the World Cup, one of the best 32. So I think they'll take what they get, and I don't think we need to say much more about the Australians.
Yeah. So let's move on to Group D,
which is by far the most interesting group in the tournament. You heard it here first. I don't know if you disagree with that, but this is.
I think I do agree with you on that, because you've got the GOAT. You've got Lionel Messi in Argentina, who...
The world-class player's world-class player. He is the best of the best.
Yeah, and although a lot of people would argue that Ronaldo is the best player in the world, on this podcast, well, at the moment we think it's Messi.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think people this year have... Honestly, the Ronaldo camp is a lot smaller than it used to be.
Yeah.
It's a lot smaller... It's a lot smaller when you don't, use the Brazilians' favorite argument of Pele had many more World Cups, type of thing. I mean, Messi, what he does for Barcelona, what he has done, and what he is doing is showing that even without a world-class attack force, he is the engine that makes Barcelona run, and they are unbeaten. They are at the top of La Liga. They haven't lost in the Champions League. They are breezing through the Copa del Rey, and Messi single-handedly carried Argentina 3 goals. He had a hat-trick against Ecuador. 3 goals to just ascend into this Argentinian national team status. I mean, obviously he's not Maradona because he hasn't won the cup. He hasn't, given them the ultimate trophy. But what he's doing right now,
knocked England out with a handball.
No, he hasn't. So I mean, he has a couple good things going for him. But in all seriousness, he is the player that everyone's looking at right now, and they're saying, can he do this? But again, the pushback, I know you'll jump in with this very easily, is that Argentina have, on paper, the best attack in the world. There is not an argument. They have Aguero, Higuain, Icardi, Di Maria, Dybala, Banega, a bunch of other players that I'm forgetting. But they have what should be an attack force that is putting up 4 or 5 goals a game on every team. But somehow they can't make it work. They can't figure out anything. And that's the problem. I mean, Sampaoli is a good manager. He's managed the egos in the squad well, and he's put out a team that Messi was able to carry. But he needs to figure out a way to play Icardi and Messi and Dybala together. He needs to find Higuain or Aguero, whoever's better in form, and play them, and find a way to work out, four attackers in positions that they can excel at. Because right now, honestly, Argentina are not a lock to go through this group. They're far from it, and they could completely miss the knockout stages as well.
I think the problem that Argentina have is very similar to that England had, sort of 10 years ago, where not quite the same in that theirs is the attack and England's is the midfield, where you have a bunch of players that are all very good, but they all play for different clubs, and they all play very similar positions for those clubs, and so there is no way to fit them all into that team without dropping someone or without playing players out of position. And at the same time, there was an interview recently with it was Rio Ferdinand, Steven Gerrard, and Frank Lampard, where they talked about their time at England and what went wrong, and they all said that the mentality for all of them, not through any conscious thought, was that their club became more important than the country. And I think that's similar for Argentina, in the sense that because they're all sort of spread out across, the world, they're all playing for top teams. They all want to win trophies. They know they can do that with their club. With the Premier League players, with the England players, they were all at clubs that could win titles in the Premier League, sort of thing. And so I think they've all got that winning mentality with their club, but they're not doing it on an international stage, which then makes that mentality worse. They start to prefer playing for the club because they're winning trophies, and it just sort of spirals. And I think that's exactly what happened with England in the days of Lampard, Gerrard, Beckham, and Scholes, when they tried to fit those 4 all into a midfield. That should have been the best midfield in the world.
No, and on paper it was.
Yeah.
On paper it was, but the game is not played on paper. And like you said, they said, how do you go up to a Rooney or a Michael Owen and tell them you're not playing today? But Sampaoli needs to say, look, Dybala, you are the driving force behind Juventus this season. You make things happen, and you're amazing. You are probably one of the best number 10s in the world, probably top 5 number 10s in the world. But Messi is the best player ever. If you can't figure out how to play another position so that Messi can play in his best position, then you have no business starting and being in the starting 11. And that's what Sampaoli needs to say. I mean, it's not an easy task. You're not just going to tell Paulo Dybala, just sit down, be on the bench. You're going to try and give him a chance to play. But if it's not working, everyone in Argentina, all of these players, this is probably Messi's last peak World Cup. I mean, maybe 4 years from now he'll prove me wrong. But this is the time, this is the best team that Argentina has had in so long. Because you want Icardi in that team, and you need to find out a way for Icardi to play and for Messi to play. And if that means dropping Dybala or Aguero or even Higuain, then Sampaoli needs to do it. And he can't sit here and try and work in all these players, because like you said, with regards to that interview, you're going to sit back and say there are regrets. Messi is going to look there. Yeah, they got this close in 2014, and they had a good team, and this team is only supposed to be better than that team, but it's not. And Sampaoli has months to figure it out, and he needs to do it right now, and he needs to manage these egos. Otherwise, things are not going to work out for Argentina come June.
It's strange how many... Again, I'm going to compare it to England, and that's not just because I'm English. It's because it's a similar scenario where you've got a lot of sort of big egos, a lot of players that are doing quite well for their clubs that then don't perform on the international stage. England have the exact same thing. And it's all about the manager being brave enough to say, look, this guy's doing better than you. He may not be a better player than you, but he's performing better than you. And for that reason, you're going to sit on the bench and you're going to deal with it. And I think managers don't have the bravery to do that enough. You know, some managers do. You know, someone like Antonio Conte at the moment with David Luiz. They've fallen out short, but at the same time, Christensen is doing fantastically at the moment. And I honestly cannot see a way for David Luiz to get back into that Chelsea defence at the moment, despite the fact he's supposed to be one of the best defenders in the world. And at the same time, with Argentina, they need to be able to say, you know what, Higuain, Aguero, you're not performing on the international stage. We're going to give Icardi a chance. We're going to give Dybala a chance. Di Maria, off you pop. Messi's going to play out wide. And we're going to go with, you know, this formation, whatever. You know, Di Maria at the last World Cup, bar one or two moments of magic, was dreadful.
And he is probably the most overrated player of the past 6 years, 7 years, of this decade, honestly. I mean, the fact that he was getting, £300,000 a week to play at Man U and do absolutely nothing. Yeah. That was the season they finished 7th, right? Like, that was a season where everyone thought they were going to light up the league, and they finished 7th.
Yeah, and I think it happens every now and again where a player is in a fantastic squad like Real Madrid or Barcelona in some occasions, or Bayern Munich, and they're doing really well and they're performing well, and you know everyone thinks they're this amazing player, and then they move to another team where they've got to do that little bit more work. The team's not quite as good, and they've just got to do that little bit more, or they've got to play a slightly different formation or whatever, and they get found out that they're maybe not quite as good as people think. And it happened with Di Maria, and he went to Man United, and admittedly that was a poor Man United side with a poor manager in just a generally poor season. But at the same time, a player of supposedly Di Maria's quality should have been able to pull that team out. And you're seeing it with Liverpool at the moment. Although there are some really poor players in that team and some really poor performances, you've got a player like Salah, a player like Mane, who they can carry that team. And you know they're nowhere near or Coutinho, and they're nowhere near the status of Di Maria or how Di Maria was then. Or, for example, to take a more recent example and a Manchester United example, Ibrahimovic. You know, he has no right to still be as good as he is at his age in a striker position. And yet he's still probably in the top 10 strikers in the world. In the top 3 finishers in the world. And that's purely because he knows how to play different ways, and he's genuinely just that good. And I think, to bring it back to the World Cup, that was a bit of a weird tangent, I think that is what Argentina need to work out. Who is actually genuinely world-class and who is in a team of world-class players and looking slightly better than perhaps they are. Because someone like Icardi, who's doing really well for his club, doesn't have as good a team around him as someone like Aguero or Higuain. But maybe if you put Icardi into Manchester City or into Juventus, he would be that much better and look better than both of them.
Which is already scary, considering he does look better than both of them right now.
So how about the other teams in Group D? You've got Iceland, Croatia, Nigeria. It's a strong group.
It is a strong group. I mean, of course, everyone's fun fact, Nigeria has played Argentina 5 out of the 6 times they've made the World Cup in their history. So we got Nigeria again with Argentina. But this time, Nigeria have an improved squad. They have Iheanacho, Iwobi, they've got Enyama in goal, I think, still, and they've got a lot of really strong players. So we can see a matchup. Obviously, they played a friendly, and Nigeria battered Argentina, but Argentina were not playing anywhere close to their full squad, nor were they playing Messi. So Nigeria, we've got them. We've got Iceland, the darlings of the world, qualified for the first World Cup ever. 338,000 people that live in that country, maybe a little bit more. And they have put together a World Cup qualifying squad behind Gylfi Sigurdsson, the $40 million man for Everton. And, of course, Croatia, they were kind of the dark horse of Euros 2016. They beat Spain and won that group, with Spain coming in second. And they were able to advance through with the likes of Luka Modric. They have Kovacic. They have, I believe, Subasic as their keeper, if I'm right. And they have Perisic as well. I mean, they have an incredibly strong team on paper, though I would say, given the quality that they have, I think they underperform as well. I think a lot of people expected them to do a lot better in Euro 2016 after they made it past their group. And I think in the World Cup, people are expecting them to do really big things as well, especially with the way that the draw went. So give me your take. I know obviously we've got some powerhouse players, but obviously there's no one overwhelming favorite in the group.
No, and I think that's the key thing about this group. And that first place position in the group is going to be crucial because chances are whoever finishes second is going to come up against France.
Yeah, and that's what you don't want.
That's the game you want to avoid. Whereas otherwise it's probably either Peru or Denmark, which is a winnable game for I'd say 3 out of the 4 teams. Iceland, maybe I'm a little bit biased after the Euros, still a little bit hurt, but I can't see them progressing from this group at all. I think
if Croatia underperforms, Iceland can advance.
I just think the thing with Iceland is with England they had a game plan, and throughout the Euros they had a game plan, and throughout qualifying they had a game plan. They haven't come up against a team of Argentina's quality yet. And I think Argentina are going to rip them apart. And I think because it's their first game as well, that's then going to shatter the morale, which is then going to give Croatia and Nigeria the chance to pick up easy points. And the other thing is, I don't know, maybe people are starting to figure Iceland out. I mean, they did really well in qualifying, and they've got a great team. But at the end of the day, when your star player is a man who hasn't performed to a £40 million price tag so far.
He scored some screamers. He scored
some screamers,
absolute screamers.
Outside those screamers, he's not really performed this season. And if his league performances carry on into the World Cup, they're going to struggle.
They are.
My pick is Argentina first, Croatia second.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the easiest one. I can also see Argentina slipping. I can also see Messi having to basically do what he did and just go off for one game and get them through, and then Argentina play France. And in a game like that, with so much riding on it, and you think about the expectations that the players put on themselves, like we're going to see a very ugly matchup. Obviously, that's a lot of forecasting. But I can see Argentina not winning because Croatia, and especially when you're playing in a location that is so favorable for your fans to access. I mean, Croatia to Russia is not that far given how much other teams have to travel. And you think about the support they're going to get. Along with them, Poland, countries in Eastern Europe are going to have such a presence at Russia that it is going to feel like home games. And Croatia is a team. They have both the mental fortitude and the technical ability to win big games. Now, you have Modric, box-to-box midfielder, one of the best dribblers in the world. He makes those incisive passes, and he can set up pretty much anyone in that very deadly attack. So I can definitely see Croatia stealing that group.
I think it'll be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. If not, definitely the most interesting, like we said at the start.
Yeah. On to Group E now, and the big boys, Brazil. They'll start their World Cup campaign against Switzerland.
No, the redemption saga.
Yeah, and then Costa Rica and Serbia are the other two in that group. Costa Rica, of course, the team that shocked everyone by escaping the group of death. I think in the last World Cup, everyone had it on paper as Uruguay, Italy, England would all beat Costa Rica. Then it all went down to what the results were between the three. And then Costa Rica produced some really stunning performances.
Yeah, and not all behind, but a lot of it was behind the gloves and the feet of Keylor Navas, Real Madrid's keeper. He's a little bit down in form. He's up there in age, but I think for what he does for Costa Rica, he is still one of the best keepers at the World Cup, and I think he's going to win them some points. Much like De Gea can save Spain, and he saves Man U in the league, I think Keylor Navas can save Costa Rica.
So, in terms of the rest of the group, I mean, I think this is one of the easiest to predict, this group, because although there are good players throughout the other three teams, they're up against a team with 11 great players.
11 great players.
Another 5 nearly great players. Another 5 pretty good players.
Yeah, I mean, Brazil...
Also with Neymar.
Yeah, and Brazil, like, you talk about a team that is ready to win. You think Germany in Europe, and then from South America, it has to be Brazil. Because you look at the quality that they have, all across the board, the depth that they have. I mean, choosing between Edison and Allison is like choosing between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. Like, you can't really have a wrong answer. And then you look at the rest of their team, and it is so incredible, especially with Tite as the manager, who allowed them to breeze through qualification. I mean, they were sitting there putting out all these rotated squads, all these young players in qualifying games, while the rest of South America was struggling to gain points. And Brazil were just chilling. And I think when you look at the Portugal and the Argentina, and you see that they have the world-class player, but you also see that there's a system built around them to try and maximize the player, and sometimes there are parts that don't work because there's a lot of overlap. But with Neymar, you know that Neymar is Brazil. He has performed on the international stage time in and time out. I mean, you talk about the Olympics, Copa America, you talk about what he did in the last World Cup before he got injured. I mean, he has routinely stepped up for Brazil, and you surround him with Jesus, Firmino, Coutinho, Marquinhos, Miranda, Marcelo, Dani Alves, Alisson, Paulinho in the midfield, Renato Augusto, just basically... And then there are a ton of players I left off. I mean, Willian, just continually looking into that team, and you see the depth that they have. I would say it's an upset if they don't get 9 points from their group.
Absolutely. As for the other 3, they're also evenly matched. I think Switzerland might struggle because they're up against Brazil first. In which case they might, crumble to Brazil and then just crumble completely through lack of confidence. Or you never know, they might be able to somehow sneak a point against Brazil and suddenly the confidence is through the roof and then they'll fly through the rest of the group. But it's difficult to predict between those 3 because I think all 3 of them have the potential to put in great performances, but also have the potential to put in some quite poor performances.
On paper, Switzerland should be a team like Croatia that should comfortably get in second. I mean, you have Shaqiri, you have Xhaka, you have in goal, you have a great choice between Sommer or Berkey, you have a lot of other quality around the top 5 leagues of Switzerland players, but for some reason they just haven't been able to put it together. I mean, they had a great run through qualifying. They went undefeated until they met Portugal, and then because they lost to Portugal, they had to go through a playoff. But this is a team that didn't lose through qualifying. Granted, they had a very easy group with like the Faroe Islands, but in the end, I think that it would be a disappointment for Switzerland to not finish second. I mean, Serbia does have Hamšík, and they have a couple other good players, but I think Switzerland needs to resign. I think they need to play for a result against Brazil, and they need to come out guns blazing against the other 2 teams so that they can qualify for the knockout stages.
Okay, so on to Group F now, and the current world champions. So Germany topped that group with Sweden, Mexico, and South Korea. I think it's another group where top of the group is fairly certain. Maybe not quite to the extent that it is with Brazil and France, because I think Sweden, Mexico, and South Korea all have the potential for an upset. But I think Germany are so strong. Just the depth in that squad. They played their B team against England and dominated the game. That shows the strength. Like England, I mean, I think it's fairly accurate to say England, they're a pot 2 team now. They're not a pot 1 team like they have been for so long. They should be in pot 2. That's the right place to put them. And I think it's going to be difficult. But I think the battle between the other 3, Sweden, Mexico, South Korea, is going to be really, really interesting. Because I think all 3 of them have some really strong players in there. South Korea with Son, especially. Mexico have Chicharito and
the Dos Santos brothers. They have Ochoa in goal still.
Yeah, and then
Sweden have Forsberg.
Exactly. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup. But I think Mexico will sneak the second spot. Personally,
I think Sweden might surprise some people. I know there are rumors about them calling on Zlatan again potentially, which would be devastating.
I think that'd be the wrong decision because they've struggled in recent times with tournaments and qualifying and stuff. And as soon as Zlatan leaves, they qualify and they do really well in qualifying.
The thing though is they do have a new manager. They do have a new manager who set them up in a better way.
Yeah.
And I think if they were to call upon Zlatan and he were to come out of retirement, I think if they were able to integrate him into that system, they would be dangerous. Easily the second favorite out of that group. Maybe even the dark horse to pull up a semifinal run.
Yeah. But I think they would need to spend a lot of time with Zlatan, getting him, bedded into that team because they've got a good setup there, and to suddenly bring in this huge personality, it's going to rock the boat.
I do want to touch quickly on Germany. I think for Germany, people are almost putting them under the radar as favorites. I think people know that they're good, but let's just take a closer look at their personnel. So obviously you have the World Cup winning squad. You lose Klose, you lose Podolski, you lose Schweinsteiger, you lose Lahm. But let's see who they bring in. You've got Kimmich, who is a revelation for Bayern, and if he's not working out, you got Klosterman, who plays for Leverkusen right now, I think, and he's amazing as well, although a bit young. You're bringing in Sané to fill a wing spot that they've needed desperately forever. So now you have someone to go along with Draxler on the wings, who's older. And again, Draxler can fill in that midfield. You have Kroos, who again fills in the mid. Who I know you and I kind of agree on this. He is the best midfielder in the world. And this guy is literally, he has the potential to go down as the most decorated club footballer of all time. That's how successful he's been. And then what Germany was missing all of last World Cup, people talked about it over and over. They tried Müller, they tried Goetze, they tried Klose, who was old, who was over the hill. Podolski, again, was over the hill. But now they have a legitimate number 9. They have Timo Werner, who is lighting up the Bundesliga, who's lighting up the League Cup for them. And he's fast, he can finish, and he knows how to get into positions to score. And that was what Germany was missing. And you think about a player like that, getting balls from Ozil and Kroos and Sané and Draxler, not to mention the fact
Royce, Müller.
Potentially Royce Müller. If Royce comes back, I mean, he's in the squad, and when he's fit, everyone knows what he can do. And you think about that defense: Boateng, Hummels, Sule, Tah, Rudiger, Mustafi. They have an embarrassment of riches, and it's honestly, the more we talk about this and the more we think about this, it would be a disaster if Germany didn't make at least the finals.
Yeah. I think the only way that Germany wouldn't make the final is if through some reason they meet Brazil earlier.
Yeah. But everyone knows that the Germany-Brazil semifinal is what people want.
Yeah.
They want that Germany-Brazil semifinal.
Like, I know you've got good teams like your South Koreas, your Belgiums, your Englands, your Polands, your Colombias that people want to do well, but to have that rematch Germany-Brazil, that's what people want, and that's what the draw gives you. So we've already talked a lot about England in Group G. Let's briefly talk about especially Belgium.
Right, especially Belgium. I know Belgium are a favourite of yours.
I am a big fan of Belgium, except for the fact they've yet to do it on the big stage. I think they're another team coming into this tournament looking to prove themselves, looking to say, here is us, this is what we can do. Because they've got, on paper, a team up there with your France, your Brazils, your Germanys. Because they've got one of the top 5 keepers in the world. They've got one of the top 5 attacking midfielders / wingers in the world in Hazard. They've got Lukaku and Strike, who when he's on form is incredible.
And let's not forget the Magic Man himself, who I believe is playing the 3rd best football in the world right now, individually, behind Messi and Neymar. It's Kevin De Bruyne.
Of course.
This guy
is the guy I was about to move on to. He is the man that is potentially going to win Belgium the World Cup. I honestly, like the way he's playing for Man City at the moment, and bearing in mind, Man City have a very, very good team. We know that. They've got some incredible strikers, some incredible players around De Bruyne. I would say that no one else in that Manchester City team is as good as Hazard. And so you put the two of them together, and you've just got this embarrassment of attacking ability. Throw in there Lukaku, and, Lukaku's not been having the best of seasons. But if you have De Bruyne feeding him in, even Lukaku can't miss some of the chances that De Bruyne is going to be giving him.
Let's not act like they're starved for options. If Lukaku's not doing well, they're going to call on Dries Mertens, the man from Napoli, who honestly I feel like he'd be a better fit for the Belgium team than they are currently. I mean, you put Hazard on the left wing, or maybe a spot where he can kind of drop back to the number 10 role, but you put Mertens up front, kind of in that false 9 role, and you just have him feed, just play that passing trio with him, Hazard, De Bruyne, and just everything would just work through those three. I mean, you're talking about beautiful football, and you're talking about a lot of goals. Because, I mean, all three of those can score and create.
And coming back to that point that we were talking about with Manchester United having, a back line and a goalkeeper you can rely on, they've also got the two Tottenham centre-backs, Alderweireld and Vertonghen, as well as Moussa Dembele and if needed, Marouane Fellaini as well. So they've got a serious physical presence.
They do.
In that sort of middle area, and also, if he's fit, Vincent Kompany as well.
Yeah, and something to keep an eye on, though, is the health of that back line. I mean, Kompany is getting up there in age, and like you said, if he's fit, but Alderweireld just recently announced that he does have a heel injury that, if it progresses to its worst stage, he could be out for up to 14 weeks.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think Belgium, I said this for the Euros as well, and for the last World Cup as well, and was disappointed, especially at the Euros. Fantastic result for Wales. Belgium should not be losing to Wales. And, Wales performed brilliantly, but when you look at the two teams, Bale would make it into that Belgium squad. Nobody else would from the Wales team. That's how much of a mismatch that is. Belgium have to be a dark horse at this point, purely because the talent they've got. But I cannot put them down as a favourite, like I would do with Germany or Brazil or France, purely because I've yet to see them really turn it on. In qualifying, they were incredible.
No,
but
of course,
qualifying in the tournament, very different situations.
Different things. And Roberto Martinez, he's making all the wrong selections. I mean, he's only called up Dangolian once. He's ignored some players. I mean, he's ignored Belgian players for so long that some of them are moving to other countries. There are other options. And I think while he's tactically very sound, he hasn't made the right selections. And selection for Belgium is going to be everything.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to need depth in the midfield, given how hard De Bruyne and Hazard work, and they're going to need some support.
For the rest of the group, Panama, very, very brilliant job getting into the tournament. Tunisia, did the job they needed to do. Can you see either of them getting points at England or Belgium? Realistically,
I can realistically see Panama getting a couple points. I think Panama can take care of Tunisia. Tunisia might unfortunately finish with 0 points, and I can honestly see Panama getting a point from England, just because I think Panama have a very, very annoying style to play against. Obviously, they were in CONCACAF, and me being an American primarily, I saw them play a lot, and they have a very brutal, very cheap, very dirty style. They'll push you around, they'll be physical, they'll get you out of your game, they'll make you uncomfortable. And then, as soon as you try and fight back, they're going to dive all over the place. They'll waste time. I mean, they'll play the ball in their own half. They'll sit back. I mean, they make Marino look like he's driving an F1 car through Old Trafford. I mean, Panama is the king of playing super defensively, and I think that they can squeeze out a result against anyone. If they're playing dirty games and the refs aren't calling them out on it, then Panama will get a result.
Okay, let's move on to the final group, our final part of today's show. Just before we move on to our team of the week to close out. Group H is potentially the group that England will have their opponents from. And we have Poland, Lewandowski's Poland, Senegal, Colombia, and Japan. I would say another group that's very open.
It's very open. It's quite like the Argentina group. If that group, Argentina's group rather, is not the most interesting, then certainly Group H is.
Yeah, because I think it's 4 quite evenly matched teams. maybe give a slight edge to Poland just because they have Lewandowski.
They have Lewandowski. I mean, they have Szczęsny/Fabianski. They have Piszczek. They have Glick. I'm sorry, I'm probably screwing up the pronunciation. But they have a solid team.
Yeah, I think Poland will be favourites for that group.
They should be. I mean, they're a pot one. Granted, the rankings do favor them because Poland haven't played any friendlies, so the rankings do favor them. But I would say that, I mean, that they do have a slight favorite. I mean, Lewandowski is one of the best strikers, if not the best striker in the world right now. Looking through at Japan and Kagawa, a couple other players, obviously he's the big name. Colombia, the darlings of last World Cup. You have James, Falcao, who has found his form. And it's just, will the golden boy James, the one who was signed to Real Madrid because of what he did, will he be able to find that World Cup form again? That's a big question. If he can, Colombia have to be the favorites. You also look at players like they have Cuadrado, Davinson Sanchez, Ospina in goal. They've got a very quality team. And then Senegal, they're the hottest team in Africa at the moment. I mean, you have Koulibaly, you have Diouf, Mane, obviously is the big one, Keita Baldiao. I think their keeper's Onana. I mean, they've got some quality there. So it's honestly, I think this group, mark this down right now, this group is going to have the most entertaining games because out of all the teams here, all of them are very attacking minded. All of them have pace. All of them have good finishers. So I can definitely see some 4-goal, 5 goals, even 6-goal games between the two teams. I mean, in this group.
And then of course the either the winner or the second place of that group, depending how the groups come out, could face England in the next round, which obviously it will be interesting. I think in terms of the way the draw is, it's more favourable for England. But as an England fan, I wouldn't want to face any of those teams any less than any of the big teams, I guess, because they're all teams that can get a result against England. I think we've been very lucky with the draw to get Panama and Tunisia. I think outside of those two, there is maybe Saudi Arabia would be the only other team, or perhaps Iceland, although after what happened at the Euros, it's difficult to say them, that you would say potentially worse than the two in our group.
Yeah. I mean,
Perhaps
England have been very fortunate. Yeah, England have been very fortunate, and Belgium has also been very fortunate. So I think really the biggest surprise would be those two not going through. But other than that, I mean, the groups are very balanced. This is really the first year last World Cup, we had 2 groups of death. We had Germany, Portugal, Ghana, and the US. And then we had the other group of death with Italy, Uruguay, England, and Costa Rica.
Yeah, and I think
we don't have that kind of lopsidedness in this group.
I think it's a very good draw from the neutral perspective, because you get to see a couple of big games early on with Portugal, Spain, with
I don't like it.
the likes of England, Belgium as well. Poland, Colombia, I think will be quite an interesting game. And then when you get into the next round, you've got the potential for, Uruguay and Spain to come up against each other, for France and Argentina, Brazil, Germany, England, Belgium, all in the mix as well, that could all come up against each other. So it's going to be a really interesting... I think the group stages will be slightly less interesting than the last World Cup, but the ladder afterwards...
Oh, they're going to be some great games.
It could potentially be one of the great World Cups of our time, sort of thing.
Well, I hope so. That's kind of the hope, right? You get all these draws and you hope that something good comes out of it in the end.
Okay, just to finish off our section on the World Cup, I'm going to put you on the spot. Your winner. Who do you think will win?
Okay, my winner for this World Cup would have to be... I'm going to go safe, but bold in a way. I think that much to everyone's disdain, I do think Brazil will find themselves on top of the footballing world once again.
Okay. I'm going to go with France. I think
you're going with France.
I backed them in the Euros, and they let me down by just going home the day before the final and sending out lookalikes. But I think this time, they've got that extra 2 years of experience, especially the betting of the youngsters with Mbappe and Dembele and so many other great players coming in. I think France will just edge it. But I think I think it comes down to that semi-final between Germany and Brazil. I think if it's a France-Brazil final, Brazil will win. If it's a France-Germany, I think France will win.
Yep, I agree with that. I can definitely see France coming out on top. The draw is very favorable for France. I mean, they might have to face Argentina, which would be tough. Obviously, I think Spain versus Brazil is my final prediction. And then Germany, France in the round of the third place game. I think Germany gets third again, and France are left on the outside.
Cool. So let's close out the show. Just one quick thing I want to mention to you before we move on to the team of the week is the FA Cup draw. Your team Liverpool in the hat.
Oh yeah, Drew Everton. We'll have a triple Merseyside derby this year.
We will indeed, and
potentially 4 if we draw in the first FA Cup game.
Yeah, and other sort of notable games: Tottenham against AFC Wimbledon, big London derby, and then the non-league sides still in the cup. A couple of them have potentially very big opponents with Hereford FC, only in their third year of existence after the
really
unfortunate demise of Hereford United not too long ago. They could face Leicester if they can beat Fleetwood in their replay. AFC Fylde also have a replay against Wigan, with the winner coming up against Bournemouth. And then Woking have a replay against Peterborough, and the winner will face Aston Villa. So, some great games. Onto the team of the week then. There are a few really easy picks in the team of the week this week. One in particular who I'm sure when we get onto our player of the week, I mean, there's no question who's won it this week. But so we've gone for sort of a 3-5-2. It's not a traditional 3 centre backs with potentially 2 wing backs / right mid, left mid. You know, we've just gone for 3 defenders, 5 midfielders, 2 attackers.
2 attacks, exactly. And at the back, obviously, the man in form. We talked about him at the start of the show. It's David De Gea. Put in a cracking performance for Manchester United on the weekend, and he, again, tied the record, and he is just in scintillating form right now, and he is the reason. When you think about this coming weekend, Manchester Derby, he is the reason that Manchester United still have a chance on paper.
Yeah, I think they'll be going into the game confident because of De Gea's form.
Yes.
Moving on to the back line. It's very Premier League heavy this week because there were just a number of really strong performances, and because they had, the double the games as normal. But quite surprising to me, given his form before the midweek game and the weekend. Ashley Williams we've put in there because he's just suddenly turned into a football player. And a decent one at that.
Incredible.
So Ashley Williams for Everton, who of course brought in Big Sam and are suddenly looking like an okay team. Big Sam comes in and within 2 games they're in the top half of the table. That's the effect a new manager can have. We've also got...
Also, to be noted, as a caveat, that the Premier League is a little bit watered down in the middle this year.
Yeah. Also in defence, we've got Antonio Valencia, a great goal for Manchester United, and just a fantastic player making that.
He is a fantastic player. I mean, bombing down the wings. He honestly plays like another attacker, but he can also get in the space and defend, play it out the back, give support to the back line of Manchester United.
And the final defender is Felipe Luis
from Atletico Madrid. Played well. He got into space. He had an 89% completion rate for his passing. He was all over the place, making 11 tackles in Atletico Madrid's win, and he also scored a goal in their 2-1 victory. So shout out to him. He's again part of that Brazil team we were talking about earlier. Is somehow the second choice left back behind Marcelo.
We're just going to fly through the rest of this because getting a bit short on time. So we've gone for a 5-man midfield. It's a very flexible thing. We're not picking an actual formation. It's just 5 midfielders because
this isn't the FIFA Ultimate Team.
No, this would be a terrible 5-man midfield. So of course we've got to put Eden Hazard in there. Fantastic return he's had for Chelsea. Back on form, backfiring, and I think he may well be able to pull Chelsea back into more of a contention for that title race. Next up, we have Perisic.
Inter Milan, he bagged a hat-trick in their 5-0 win to vault into the top of the table. nothing need to be said there. Great win for him. Speaking of hat tricks, we've got Wayne Rooney coming in for Everton, bagged in 3 goals in their midweek win. Absolutely screaming goal from the halfway line. Have no idea.
Further back, it was in his own half.
It was in his own half. I don't even know what Joe Hart was doing, but Wayne Rooney just struck it, and as soon as he hit it, everyone knew it was going in. The trajectory, the weight was just perfect.
Following Wayne Rooney, another player who had a fantastic midweek game, Mesut Ozil, who was involved, was it 4 goals or something like that in the space of 4 minutes, or 3 goals?
He had 2 assists and a goal in the space of 4 minutes.
That's it, yeah.
Yep. And our last midfielder would be Kingsley Coman. He's part of that France team that Kieran rates so highly. 2 shots on target, a goal, 90% passing accuracy. He was all over the place, controlled the midfield in Bayern's win against Hanover. They have cemented themselves on top of the Bundesliga, and they don't look like they're going to give it up. As far as other top 5 leagues, our contributions in the attacking space consist of Luis Suarez. Finally found some form. He bagged a goal to get Barcelona the draw, and had another goal disallowed for offsides, which was an incredible run. And we just want to give a shout out to him because he has caught some flack this season. I would say that people have really started to be down on him, but he's creating space and pressing into the defense, and I think it's finally paid off, and he's going to start bagging some more goals for the Catalans. And that leaves us with our final team of the week, very out of nowhere. From Serie A, plays for Udinese, Maxi Lopez. He's an Argentine footballer. He's quite up there in age, 33 years old, but he bagged 4 goals in Udinese's 8-3 win in the Coppa Italia against Perugia.
Unbelievable.
2 penalties and 2 regular goals, so that rounds out our first team of the week.
And I think ordinarily Maxi Lopez may have taken the player of the week. 4 goals is an incredible achievement, but not quite as incredible as 14 saves in one match. So our player of the week is, of course, David De Gea.
Yeah. And it was a great week for keepers because in addition to David De Gea, he was just so good. We only have 1 keeper position, so we'd like to give an honorable mention team of the week for the Benevento goalkeeper, who scored a last-minute equalizer, diving header from a Benevento free kick, equalized against AC Milan to get their first point of Serie A. AC Milan are in free fall. Gattuso slapped a reporter. So that is all going according to plan, and Benevento have some consolation in what has been otherwise a terrible recently promoted season.
It's always great when the goalkeepers score the goals, especially in 95th minute.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they have no idea what to do because they never have any celebrations planned. They just kind of run around like a chicken with their head cut off.
But that is all we have time for on the debut episode of On the Volley with myself, Kieran Lacey, and the fantastic man across the pond, Paolo Santamaria. And
it was an honor.
We will be back next week with more news, views, roundup of the matches. And,
as well as Champions League, which strikes us midweek, and as well as the last of the Europa League.
Yep. So tune in next week if you feel like you want to hear more of our opinions. Which, why wouldn't you?
Exactly. Well, take care, and we'll see you next week.